All right, here are the answers for Wednesday's starters. So we have Caden's space shuttle crew accidentally left him behind on a mysterious planet. He soon realizes that his body is aging much faster on this planet than it did on Earth. The graph shows the proportional relationship between the number of weeks that Caden spends on the planet X and the number of years that he ages Y. So looking at this, what does the x-axis represent? So we go to the x-axis, and it represents weeks. What does the y-axis represent? Well, we go to the y-axis, and it is the years. So it represents the number of years that he's aging. What does the point 1, 2 represent on the graph? Remember that first point in an ordered pair is always the x value, and the second value is the y value. So the x is 1 week. And that equals that he's aged 2 years. And in this particular problem, what's the constant of proportionality, or the unit rate? We actually just found it. So for 1 week, he's aging 2 years, so it's 2 years per 1 week. For 8 weeks, how many years would he age? So if he ages 2 years per week, and we want to know about 8 weeks, we're just doing 2 times 8, which is 16 years. Write an equation for this graph and make sure it's in the form of y is equal to kx. Remember that this k is just your constant of proportionality, or your unit rate. We actually found the unit rate right here, which was 2. So where that k is, we're just going to put a 2. So we have y equals 2 times x. So in order to figure out the number of years, we just do 2 times the weeks, and that'll give us our years. All right, then we've got the percent proportion. Remember that the percent proportion is going to be your part over your whole, and that's going to equal your percent over 100. And when we're going through these problems, we need to make sure we go through that checklist. So if we're trying to find 64% of what number is 48, we're going to set up our proportion. We're always going to put the 100 in that lower right corner. That side represents the percent. We're going to look for a percent sign or a percent in the problem. In this case, it says 64% with the sign. So we have 64 over 100 to show that that's the percent. We're looking for the word of, and that means out of. And in this case, it says out of what number? Which means we don't know what that whole is. So that's the part we're trying to find. We don't know the whole, but the part is 48. We cross multiply. 48 times 100 is 4,800. X times 64 is 64x. Those two things have to be equal. So we have to figure out 64 times what number is equal to 4,800, because those two things have to be equal. If you don't know what that is, we have our equation. We're going to split it. We're going to divide by 64 because we want that 1x by itself. We have 4,800 divided by 64, and that equals 75. And then 64 divided by 64 is just 1x, and we usually just write that as an x. So 75 is our whole. So 64% of 75 is equal to 48. Number 3, we're setting up the same way. It says what percent of 200 is 290? So we set up our proportion. This side of the proportion represents the percent. We look for a percent sign in that problem, and we don't see a percent sign. What we do see is that it says what percent. That means that's the thing that we don't know, so that's where our x goes. We look for the word of, and in this particular problem, of, and that means out of 200 means that 200 is the whole thing. And then we've got 290 on the top. And you'll notice that in this problem, the part is bigger than the whole. So when we get our percent, the percent is going to be bigger than 100. If the part is bigger than the whole, then the percent is going to be bigger than 100. So we cross multiply 290 times 100, and that's going to be 29,000. And then 200 times x is 200x. Remember that those two things have to be equal when we cross multiply. So we're looking for 200 times some number is going to give us 29,000. And if you don't know that, we have 29,000 is equal to 200x. We're going to go ahead and split that and divide by 200. So we have 29,000 divided by 200, and that's going to give us 145, and that is equal to x. So we have 145%. Remember that I said that percent was going to be bigger because our part was bigger than the whole.